The silent signal. On the night of August 15, 1977, at Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Observatory, volunteer astronomer Jerry Ehrman leaned over the endless green and white line printouts rolling from the receiver. He'd been combing through static for hours, searching for patterns that might hint at intelligent life. The task was monotonous, columns of numbers, letters, and timestamps. But then, amidst the sea of data, something appeared that stopped him cold: 6EQUJ5. The signal was impossibly strong, perfectly narrow-band, and lasted for 72 seconds, the exact time it took the telescope's fixed beam to cross a point in the sky. Ehrman, heart-pounding, circled it in red pen and scrawled the word that would echo through history: wow. Scientists across the globe pored over the data. The signal's frequency, 1420.4556 MHz, matched the natural emission line of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. It was the universal language of the cosmos, one any intelligent civilization might choose for interstellar communication. But no satellite, aircraft, or terrestrial source matched it. It was as if something, or someone, had called out from across the stars and then gone silent. The Big Ear's dish swept back and forth for months, listening, but the signal never returned. Decades passed. The Big Ear was dismantled, and the wow signal was relegated to mystery. Yet fragments of its data lived on in classified government archives, cross-referenced with later unidentified transmissions and astronomical anomalies. In one such file, a faint note was appended by an unknown analyst: possible cyclical pattern, next recurrence circa 2025 plus or minus 3 years. No one ever followed up. That is, until one quiet night in Maple Hill, Ohio, 48 years later, when the cosmos called again, and this time, it didn't whisper. Clara Jennings had lived in Maple Hill her entire life. A high school science teacher by day and amateur radio astronomer by night, she'd built a small backyard observatory filled with aging equipment, an old parabolic dish, a signal analyzer, and enough cables to make her neighbors shake their heads. To most, she was just the space lady. But that June night, while tuning her receiver across the hydrogen line, she noticed something strange: a signal so pure, so unnervingly clean, it froze her hand mid-dial. It began as a soft hum, then grew louder, pulsating with mathematical precision. Her instruments lit up, every meter pin to maximum. She checked and rechecked her calibrations. The source wasn't local interference. It was cosmic. And the frequency? Exactly the same as the wow signal, to the 10th of a decimal. Her heart raced as she began recording. But the hum changed, modulating into an unsettling sound, distorted human screams layered beneath the static. Moments later, her phone vibrated. It wasn't a call, just a blank notification, then text began scrolling across the screen: signal acknowledged. Countdown initiated, 72 hours. The words repeated until her battery died. Confused and trembling, Clara unplugged everything, but the hum continued. Even with no power, her radio still emitted the sound, faint but constant, like the universe itself was whispering through her walls. When she stepped outside, she saw neighbors standing in their driveways, listening to their radios, phones, and televisions, all playing the same eerie tone. Maple Hill had become a receiver. By dawn, panic rippled through the town. People smashed their phones, yanked cords from walls, and pulled car batteries, but it made no difference. Even powerless devices hummed faintly, vibrating with a frequency too low to be natural. Children covered their ears, saying the noise made their bones shake. The local radio station tried to go off air, yet the broadcast continued, unmanned, looping the same chilling screams and a mechanical countdown ticking from 72 hours down. The mayor gathered townsfolk in the community center. Engineers, mechanics, and the local sheriff tried to jam the signal, but it was everywhere, in the electric grid, the plumbing, even through analog watches. One farmer claimed he heard it echoing through his metal silo like a whispering wind. When Clara sent her recordings to Dr. Michael Avery, an astrophysicist from her alma mater, he called her back immediately. His voice was shaky. "Clara, this isn't random interference. It's a digital modulation, embedded data, repeating the hydrogen frequency. It's the wow signal, but altered." He paused. "It's like someone replied. And they're using your town as the transmitter." That evening, as the countdown ticked past 60 hours, the town tried to leave. But every car that crossed the Maple Hill limit sputtered and died. GPS devices spun wildly, recalculating routes back to the center of town. It was as if something unseen had drawn a border around them, and locked it tight. The second night brought nightmares. People woke drenched in sweat, claiming to hear screams not from their devices but inside their heads. Dogs refused to enter rooms where television sat unplugged yet faintly glowed. By morning, the countdown reached 48 hours, and the broadcasts grew clearer. The screens had rhythm, patterns. Dr. Avery's analysis showed harmonic intervals consistent with human phonemes. "They are not cries," he whispered to Clara. "They are syllables. A language." But then came the shadows. It began subtly, a street lamp's glow stretched too far, an alley's darkness deepened beyond natural black. People noticed their own silhouettes shimmered unnaturally, detached for an instant when they moved. Sheriff Daniels, checking a flickering lamppost, saw his shadow lag half a second behind. When he turned, it didn't. The next moment, it lunged. Witnesses said he screamed once before both he and his shadow vanished. Panic spread. The remaining townspeople sealed windows, covered mirrors, and avoided light altogether. Clara and Avery constructed a crude Faraday cage in her observatory, lining the walls with foil and wiring grounded rods deep into the earth. Inside, the hum dulled to a faint pulse. But even there, when the signal surged, the shadows in the room rippled like disturbed water. Outside, the red glow from the local radio tower intensified, beating in time with the descending numbers. Maple Hill had begun to breathe with the signal. Inside Clara's observatory, Avery pored over data while Clara monitored the tower's pulse. He'd isolated the subcarrier signal beneath the main broadcast, binary coordinates. When mapped, they formed a diagram pointing directly to Chi Sagittarii, the very region of sky where the 1977 WOW signal originated. But there was more. Embedded in the lower band was a waveform matching Earth's magnetic resonance pattern, as though the sender were mirroring the planet back at itself. "The signal isn't just calling us," Avery muttered. "It's locking on." As the countdown neared 24 hours, the audio distortion clarified. Through bursts of static, they heard fragmented words. "We heard your call. We come to silence noise." Clara realized the implication, the original wow Signal wasn't a greeting, it was a filter test, a cosmic ping waiting for a specific resonance to answer. By receiving and rebroadcasting, Maple Hill had tripped some ancient beacon. Now the return wave was coming home. The town's power grid flickered erratically. Lights pulsed red in synchrony with the tower's heartbeat. The frequency seeped into every metallic surface. When Clara placed her hand on a copper wire, she swore she felt a faint pulse, like a living thing breathing through the circuit. At midnight, the final hour began. The tower atop Miller Hill blazed crimson, visible for miles, pulsing like a colossal heart. The power grid failed entirely, plunging the town into darkness. Then came the silence, thick, suffocating, absolute. For one horrifying moment, the countdown froze at 1 second. People huddled together, whispering prayers. Then the last second ticked away. Radios screamed in unison. The shadows on walls detached, elongating, crawling toward their owners. They took form, humanoid, featureless, rippling like heat distortion. Anyone touched by them simply stopped. Their shadows merged, and both were gone. Clara and Avery, trapped in the observatory, heard the screams fade one by one until nothing remained but the low hum of static. On their monitor, a final message blinked in Morse code. Silence will cleanse. When the countdown reached 0, the signal ceased. A low-frequency wave rippled through the ground, shaking foundations. Then, nothing. The stars above Maple Hill dimmed, as if light itself bent away. No bird sang. No wind moved. Sound itself had died. The town was utterly still. When recovery teams arrived days later, Maple Hill was a grave of silence. Every microphone, every device, every attempt to record sound yielded only blank files. The rescuers moved like ghosts, unable to hear even their own footsteps. Yet the air was heavy, vibrating faintly, as if the world itself remembered noise. Everywhere they looked, shadows remained burned into walls and streets, perfect silhouettes of men, women, and children caught mid-motion. The scientists who examined them found trace radiation consistent with an intense electromagnetic burst, but no bodies, no blood, no decay. Only absence. Clara's observatory remained intact. Inside, her laptop still ran on emergency battery, displaying her final log entry, transmission complete. Awaiting acknowledgement. Next to it was an audio file that, when slowed to 1,000th speed, revealed a whisper, receiver established. Dr. Avery's research notes, recovered from the Faraday cage, suggested that the WOW signal was a seed transmission, a galactic call meant to find civilizations capable of listening. Once engaged, the reply frequency converted organic matter into a high-energy resonance, transforming life into dark reflections, stored beyond the visible spectrum. Maple Hill was renamed the Echo Field, sealed off by military quarantine, and quietly erased from public record. 6 months later, deep in the Australian desert, the Parkes radio telescope detected a new burst identical to the Maple Hill pattern. Analysts expected a cosmic origin, but its source coordinates pointed not to Sagittarius, but to the Echo Field itself. The signal had bounced back from Earth. Decoded, it carried a chillingly concise message. Signal complete. Awaiting next receiver. Hours later, random electronic devices across the globe began to glitch. Smart speakers turned on by themselves, whispering in faint hydrogen line tones. In quiet homes, lights flickered in slow, rhythmic pulses. A child in Tokyo reported seeing her shadow wave when she wasn't moving. And at Ohio State University, in a sealed archival room where the original WOW! Signal printout still hung framed on the wall, the ink around the word, WOW! Began to darken, as if freshly written. Someone, somewhere, had circled it again. The universe had answered once more. The end.